Hey everyone, this is Shaun Mirani with ISE. I'm going to turn it over briefly to my colleague Sam, who wants to talk about some ISE stuff.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hi, we're live on the internet where people do things for live purposes, live actions happening right now. Cool, awesome. Quickly wanted to update everyone watching that we are going to be at B-Sides Philly on B-Sides Tampa, February 1st and 2nd essentially. And at B-Sides Philly, make sure to come through and check out some cool interactive labs where you'll be doing stuff around the vulnerabilities that we've been presenting here. So any of the things that you've seen on our blogs or our live streams, you're gonna get to try yourself on a little lab network. And then at B-Sides Tampa, you'll be able to play our traditional selflessly broken CTF. Other than that, I don't know if we're gonna have any other live streams before RSA, but in March, like the first week of March, we're gonna have the IoT Village at RSA in the sandbox area. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna have a lot more interactive demos there, like patient monitors, cameras, things like that. Should be a lot of cool stuff going on there, and we'll have some other people we'll be hosting some other people with some SDR labs and some hardware hacking labs. So make sure that you check out the IoT sandbox. We're doing the IoT Village there at RSA. It should be a lot of fun. Definitely, more exciting than checking out vendors. So anyway, with that, I know we're gonna have some cool stuff around chaining exploits. So Shaun, please.
Sure. So today I'm going to be talking about the Lenovo iX4 300D NAS device, and I'm going to show you a couple of vulnerabilities that we found. And it's kind of neat actually, because we're going to go from cross-site scripting to getting root command injection that an unauthenticated remote adversary could exploit. So let me just get right started and show you how this is going to work out. So here is the NAS interface, if we can switch over my view. So here we go. Here's the web interface. It's pretty standard. It's got a lot of endpoints. Background first. We have command injection, right? So I know it's kind of unusual to start with like the final vulnerability, but you'll see why in a second. So it's this post request to /cp/personal cloud join. You have a couple of parameters at the end. Sorry about that, burp, automatic project backup. So all the magic happens in this request body. The injection point is in the password field. So you can see we're using backticks to inject a shell command. In this case, it's a reverse shell that's just going to connect back to my IP address on port 9000. And let me just show you that real quick. Just send this request. And we have a root shell, right? So that's pretty cool. But from a hypothetical attacker's point of view, this is kind of problematic for a couple of reasons. First reason is this is an authenticated attack. You need this session cookie in order to conduct it. If I were to just remove this and rerun my netcat listener, send it again, it says invalid password authentication failure. So that's no good. We generally want exploits we can run without having to guess passwords or steal credentials. Also, we can't just CSRF a victim into running this for us because of this token in the URL, this __C parameter. That's randomly generated for every session and bound to your session. It's unpredictable, seemingly, and the same origin policy would prevent us from reading this because it's stored in the local storage of the NAS interface's origin. So an attacker site that's hosting like a CSRF page wouldn't be able to access this or guess it in any way. So that's kind of a dead end there. But as a lot of people know, there is a way to get around same origin policy restrictions. And that's the old classic vulnerability, cross-site scripting. And it turns out we were able to find one of those in the same interface. So let me just show you how that works. So a lot of the endpoints have this URL parameter called cat. And what it does when you send the request, you'll notice that I included the text reflected in there. If I search for reflected in the response body, it includes it verbatim. What if you just put like a script alert1 tag in there? Now this has a quotation mark, so we're going to have to break out of that. and end that ahref tag, start a new script tag, end script, remove that. So if we issue this, we should get back a loadable script that just alerts one. If we were to go to this URL in the browser, you can see it pretty much does exactly what we expected. Now, how can an attacker use this to bypass the restrictions that we noted earlier, namely the session token needing to be present and the __C parameter, which seems to serve as an anti-cserv token? Well, if we can inject JavaScript onto the page of a logged in user, and this JavaScript pulls a remote script that basically issues the same post request using something like XML HTTP request, then we can pull this C __C parameter out of wherever it's stored, in this case local storage, include that in the request, and send it along. And since cookies are automatically sent by the browser in all requests to the origin that they correspond to, that we don't have to worry about that. That'll be automatically sent. And theoretically, if we can just give the victim a link to a page that has this script on it, it will issue our command injection request and get us a root shell. How would we go about making such a script? Let me show you. So I just have this folder that I'm going to use as the root directory for Python simple HTTP server, and we're going to host the script there. I'm going to call it exploit.js. So the first thing we want to do is create a XML HTTP request object. Do that pretty simply. Cool. Now, we want to make a post request. So to do that, we need to use the open method on XML HTTP request. So x.open, we give it the method, and we give it a URL. We need this URL, so I'm going to copy that again. Copy URL, copy scroll command, put that in quotes. I'm going to cross out this C parameter because we're going to use that in a second. And to send post data, you need to use the send method. And we can literally just copy and paste this. It'll include this as raw data, but it'll be interpreted by the web server as post, or whatever the content type is called, application/xwww form URL encoded data. So we can send that. It has the same reverse shell command to connect back to our server on 192.168.1.12, port 9000. Okay, and at the very end, we just want to close the object. Now, the last piece we need to fill in is getting the C parameter that acts as the cserv token. So if we go back in the web interface, we can inspect the browser's storage. So, I mean, you can look around, you can see cache storage, nothing there, cookies. Well, that's our session cookie that we need, but that's automatically sent by the browser, so we don't have to manually handle that. IndexedDB, nope, local storage. It's called iOmega user cookie. And thankfully, the browser has this built-in API for accessing local storage objects called local storage. And all we have to do is you call the get item method of local storage with the key name that we want, and it'll give us the value. So for example, var c equals local storage.get item. And this is all in the online documentation for local storage. I'm not making this up, or I looked at this beforehand, so it's not like I have this memorized. And what was it called? iOmega user cookie? Okay. And so that'll be included in the URL that we want. Cool. So theoretically, if we host this on a web server and inject a script that takes this as its source, then we can get command injection on a logged in user. Let me just give this a review to make sure I'm not making any silly mistakes. Cool. So I'm going to host Python's simple HTTP server. And because I'm lazy and I don't want to enter port numbers, I'm going to run this as root so it can do port 80. And this is the only time you should ever run Python as root. Okay, so let's go back to our cross-site scripting example. We want to change this alert 1, remove that. Add a source attribute. My IP address is 192.168.112, and we called it exploit.js. Let's send this in burp. Oh, looks like we have to URL encode that. Not an issue. Exploit.js. Looks like, okay, so doesn't like our use of %3d, so, or our use of the plus symbol to encode spaces. So instead I'm going to do %20. Look at that again. Right, so it's now the proper form that we need. So if we copy this URL, and Netcat is listening, if we just go to this page, authentication failure. Sometimes sometimes it does crazy things with the session, so you have to see logout user undefined. So you have to restart your session. That's probably when I did the cross-site scripting earlier. It didn't like that for whatever reason. Okay, let's try that again. Authentication failure. It is not picking up what we need there. Let me take a look real quick in Burp Suite, see what's happening. I just want the developer tools. X.close is not a function. Well, that's one error. We can just remove that. And I think I just spotted the other mistake. So you can see it's sending __c equals null. So that means I wasn't getting the cserv token from local storage correctly. Let me try that again. Missing semicolons. Could that be a problem? Yes, I do, but semicolons are optional. Okay, let's try that again. It was called iOmega user cookie. It's no longer present. Maybe it's a mismatch name. Let me copy it directly to eliminate that possibility.
This is how we know if people are watching. When they give us suggestions to help you.
Yeah, thanks for the suggestions. Those are pretty common mistakes that we all make. Okay. Auth failure. Whoops. Still posting with C equals null. Okay. Definitely interesting. Let's clear our session once again. Okay, I can see the local storage item is there now. Let's copy the URL once again. Local storage.get item. Definitely not null. Now it is null. That is super weird. Why is it null on that page, but not null here? Manage. Something about this page isn't like. If we go there manually, or from the link. Network. All right. Let's try this again. Did it work? Oh, looks like it worked. So we got our shell just by going to that link. That wasn't really convincing, so let me just show you that one more time. I'm gonna close this shell, start it again, actually clear that, start it again, go to this link, and there we go. So that's how you get root command injection just by visiting the link that has a cross-site scripting payload. Classic reflected XSS that we use to escalate to an admin session to perform an authenticated command injection request. And anyone on the internet could give you this link that just includes some malicious JavaScript from any random page on the web. And they can, if you're logged into your NAS and you click that link, they can get a reverse shell from your router or from your NAS device. There are too many routers. So yeah, that's pretty much how you do it. Do it any number of times. You could even put this in an image source since it's a GET request. Load like a 1x1 or an invisible image, and it makes this request. You'd never even see it. So yeah, pretty cool. Any questions at all?
Pausing for question. Anne says, nice.
It is nice. So yeah, this was a pretty short and sweet demo compared to some of the other ones, like my last one.
How did you find this?
How did we find this?
Yeah, what was your process and sort of like what were you doing?
Well, I personally didn't find this, but if I were aiming to find this, here's what I would do. For the cross-site scripting, I would look for requests that include parameters in them, and I would try to modify those parameters, include like unique strings, like this is my reflected XSS test and stuff like that, and then examine the responses, see which responses contain that reflected string. And then go from there, include like script tags, like we did here, and see which ones don't escape or don't sanitize the script tags so that we can get cross-site scripting. And you want to make sure, of course, that the content type is correct, like it has to be text/HTML. If it's not, then you're not going to get cross-site reflected XSS. So you need to do that. Command injection is a little different. It's also you're testing different injection points. If you have access to source code, it's a lot easier because you can just grep for vulnerable functions that are commonly exploited for command injection. Like if you search for in PHP, if you have shell exec or exec, if you have popen, things like that. If they're just calling command line functions, like shelling out, passing user supplied input to the shell without proper sanitization or validation.
What sort of resources do you refer to when you're learning about, reverse engineering skills or looking for security vulnerabilities? Like, what were some key resources that helped you?
Okay, well that's...
This is a question from Anne.
Okay, cool. So, well, there are a lot of great books out there for web application security specifically. So there's like the Web Application Hacker's Handbook, I believe. There's like the Tangled Web. These are books that go very much into depth on web application vulnerabilities, command injection, probably cross-site scripting, definitely. If you don't want to buy a book, a lot of this stuff you can learn just by Googling. That's how I did it. There are a lot of tutorials out there, a lot of blog posts from great security companies that talk about this kind of stuff. A lot of free resources available in the world of security.
Well, what would someone Google though? Like, if they were going to start out?
Yeah.
Or do you have specific series that you've watched or seen online, like a blog that you follow that you get inspiration from or resources in terms of learning?
I don't have like a particular blog series that I follow. I follow like I look at the Reddit NetSec subreddit, Network Security, NETSEC, and that has a lot of links to these types of write-ups that talk about, among other things, cross-site scripting and command injection. So that is definitely one way to learn about these skills. Just read links that other people have posted, their blog posts, articles, stuff like that.
All right. Looks like people are just talking about suggestions.
Okay.
Oh, someone has another question.
What is the
Someone, Jared is asking about, does this exploit, do chaining these two vulnerabilities only work if the person is actually logged in?
Yeah, it does.
So what sort of scenario, like how often would someone just be logged into their NAS and then, is that a tiny window? Or is it?
Well, it depends. Like people who are administrating their NAS devices, like if they log in once and then they stay logged in, they don't clear their cookies, they don't clear their session, then they're going to be logged in. Their session's going to be valid and they're going to be exploitable.
Okay.
So it really depends. That is a significant limitation. I get what you're saying, that the person you're targeting is definitely going to have to be logged in for this to work. But you can send this link. The great thing about it is you can send this link as many times as you want. Like you don't have to get it on the first try. Like send it one day, send it the next day. Just keep sending this link until they're logged in, then you get them.
So I mean, you could also just spam it to everyone.
You would just mass post, get it to the front page of Reddit somehow, like in a sneaky image. It's like an invisible image tag, and then someone's bound to be logged into a NAS like this.
So like trying to get it posted.
Just mass exploitation.
Yeah, on just some giant.
Not that I'm saying to do that, but that's just one way that someone can
Yeah.
go about actually getting results out of this.
Yeah. So it's not like just this is like only applicable to a lab scenario. It's that these things happen. I mean, but also this is vulnerability. This is a demo of something that we researched and talked about in a blog back in the fall.
Yes, there was a blog post by my colleague Rick on October 1st, collecting shells by the sea of NAS vulnerabilities. It's on blog.securityevaluators.com, so definitely check that out if you're interested.
Oh, actually, Jared is clarifying. Not only do you have to be logged in, but do you have to be actually on that page? Does that page have to be open?
No, the page does not have to be open, because as long as your session is valid, when the attacker's JavaScript makes that request to your NAS endpoint, it's going to send the cookie automatically. It's not like you have to be active on the page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Jared, does that clarify it? I guess he'll get back to us whenever the delay catches up.
Sounds good.
Oh, and then Anna's just still curious about learnings, like how many hours are you spending to do a decent security assessment? Like if you just grabbed, you know, a router and you're like, hey, like how long before you start finding some results?
Well, it really depends on the router. Some vendors are better than others in terms of security. On average, I would say like no more than a couple hours until you start finding some really good stuff.
You're so legitimately 2 hours and you're finding
Yeah.
some vulnerability worth actually disclosing.
Yeah,
to
2
the
hours of
vendor.
just sitting, like looking at the router. If you're like actually working on it actively, 2 hours of that, yeah, definitely you can find some stuff.
And is there anything about like, you know, what incentives does someone have for companies? You know, are more and more companies getting bug bounty programs? Or is it worth, you know, your time as a researcher to, instead of doing your day job, you could research this, make some side money, do things like that? Is that becoming more of a possibility?
You mean for independent researchers?
Yes.
Yeah, there is a rising phenomenon of people like doing bug bounty, like submitting to bug bounties for money as like a side gig, actually making some serious money off of that. For us, we've had some mixed experiences. Bug bounties they can be helpful for facilitating the disclosure process. They make it easier for us, and hopefully they show that the vendor is more interested in fixing these vulnerabilities and is actually going to get back to us. Sometimes that doesn't happen as quickly as we would like to, if at all. So it's still like, I would say it's an evolving thing, and we're going to have to look at this on a larger time scale to actually see where this is going.
All right. Cool.
But it looks promising right now.
Yeah, it does make sense. If the vendor that you guys are researching has a bug bounty program, I mean, they already have a disclosure process set up for you guys to even contact them. Sometimes finding the correct way to contact a vendor, the manufacturer, is difficult, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, who else is talking? Jared is also clarifying some more things about like, he says, I'm mostly asking because that was how you bypass the authentication failure.
Right. The authentication failure, well, there's two things there. It's the point that it's the fact that you need to have a valid session for the web interface. You need to be logged into the web interface. Not that you need to be on the page. You just need to have a cookie that corresponds to a valid session. And the second thing is you need that CSRF token, that anti-CSRF token. So the way we bypassed that was by running the malicious code on the web interface itself. So since we were running on the same origin, we were able to bypass any restrictions on authentication and anti-CSRF defenses.
Okay, cool. I mean, maybe I don't know how big the audience would be, but Anne is definitely curious about seeing someone do that 2 to 3 hours of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say logistically that would be not, you know, ethically the greatest thing to do on a live stream, because we would then be showing you like new vulnerabilities that we hadn't disclosed yet. But we have shown like step by step simulating what it was like to find a vulnerability in some other videos. And even when we first did a live stream with Motherboard, one of our colleagues, Jake Holcomb, does like a step-by-step 4-hour walkthrough of finding a buffer overflow in a router, which is, it was very, very detailed. It was like, this is what research looks like. It was, so if you want to go check out some of the, we can post a link or somewhere. We can tweet it out, be like, hey everyone, like if you follow us on Twitter, we'll post a link to those live streams that Motherboard Vice did with us.
Yeah, it's really good stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Max is just curious about, you know, how do you disclose to someone that doesn't have like a bug bounty or like a contact like security@lenovo.com or something like that.
So I'm not necessarily the person in charge of doing all the disclosure, but I think what we do if they don't have like a dedicated security response team is we just try to find like their whoever's in charge of like product, or if we can try to find like a business email for them. Basically, we just disclose it to them in any way possible, like any avenue that we have for contacting them, any email address. I mean, you got to disclose it to them somehow. So it's not. I know it's not like ideal or that streamlined, but that's what we end up doing in those cases.
And then I don't know if anyone's noticed, but at the end of our blogs, we usually put our disclosure timeline about when we discovered the issue, and then you know, when we contacted them, and if they reached back out to us, and you know, if they've like issued a patch or something like that. But we'll sort of like, I guess we've never really talked about it. Is like, what is our disclosure timeline? What sort of like policy are we following here with our
Yeah,
process?
we follow the 45-day disclosure timeline. So we give the vendor 45 days to address and patch the vulnerability and push out updates. Afterwards, at that point, we say we're going to disclose this.
Publicly, right?
Yeah,
Like
publicly.
in a blog or some sort of research document.
Yeah, to the whole world. We do give vendors, we can extend the deadline if they ask and if there's like good reason for that. But 45 days is generally the policy.
Okay, and then Anne is also curious about, is there a different methodology for looking at a web application, which is what a lot of our clients bring us. Like at ISE, a lot of clients have different web applications, software associated with that we're looking at, and that's what you're doing for your day job.
Mhm.
But for this research stuff that we're also doing,
Yeah.
we're looking at embedded systems, connected electronics,
Yep.
IoT, and how different is your approach between those two worlds?
Well, a lot of IoT devices come with web apps, so they overlap hugely there. I don't think I've seen an IoT device that doesn't have some kind of web app in our research, even if it's like a small little, just couple of page application. They all have some sort of web accessible interface that you can look for common vulnerabilities there. So that's why we talk about web application security in IoT, because they are so intermingled there.
Cool. Jared's asking about automated tools like Fortify or Veracode if we're like scanning. I know that personally, like one of the things that ISE prides itself on is that we don't do a lot of automated scans. We don't just scan and then like send a report back to the client saying like, here's some vulns we found. It's that we really try to go through the code manually. We try to do a more like hands-on assessment.
Yeah, well, running scanners can save you a lot in time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say just run scanners. We think maybe some of us on the research team, have been running some scanners. Not as part of our main methodology. We mainly do manual testing, source code review, stuff like that. We have done a little bit of fuzz testing, so that is there for our methodology, but not like active, not a lot of scanning.
I'm not sure if Jared was asking about Fortify or Veracode
Specifically.
Yeah, specifically, or just scanners in general.
I'm not familiar with either of those.
Okay.
Maybe one of my colleagues is.
All right. Yeah, Jared wants to know if we can do a live stream about teaching his dad how to use his email and check it.
If I don't know.
I mean, so we do have an idea that we want to start doing a little bit more like more humorous concepts, some videos based around some more common misnomers around security and privacy. So that might be a little bit more like appeal to the wide audience. So that's something that we're thinking about too, is doing a little bit like I guess your daily practical security needs or things that people think are keeping them safe, like like if I'm using a VPN, I'm untraceable. So
security myths, yeah.
So sort of debunking that's something that we're going to be working on, hopefully.
Yeah.
Not seeing any other questions pop up yet, but this was good. Like, looking for more and more people to interact with us on the live stream. We don't want to just like come up here, do a video, and be like, look at us, try to do something live. We want to have more people interact with us and ask questions. This is definitely part of the research team's goal, is to be a resource for education and not just be like show off some cool vulns we found. It's the same idea that we want to do for IoT Village. It's not just a place to show off. It's a place to talk about things and learn, and then also show remediation. A lot of the times, we focus on having people give talks at the IoT Village where people explain what someone should do to fix the issue that they found. If Anne was going to start like learning a programming language that would help them understand, security research, what programming language would be a great one to start with? Like if they understood C, would they be a good foundation for doing security research, or is there no good starting point?
If for a starting point, I would say don't do C. I would say start with Python 3.
Or C.
No, Python 3. Python is pretty much like the most, I would say, the most widely used language for writing security proof of concepts and exploits. So it's definitely useful to understand it. It also has a pretty manageable learning curve, so it doesn't take a whole lot of time to get up and running writing useful tools and programs with Python. Yeah.
And so that would include their ability to find vulnerabilities too. Like if they started to master Python, finding vulnerabilities would become a little bit easier for them as well.
Yeah, sure. A lot of stuff out there is written in Python, and
Okay.
it's useful to understand what code is doing.
But yeah, I was actually good. I had brought up about remediation and mitigation stuff as well. But you know, Max is actually saying like, what could of Lenovo, what should Lenovo have done? I'm getting tongue twisted, but you understand what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
sure.
How does Lenovo fix this, or what would have prevented this issue from even cropping up in the first place?
Okay, so for the cross-site scripting one, the main mistake they made was failure to escape or sanitize their output. What they should have done is encoded that the string that we included in the cat parameter. They shouldn't have just reflected it back to the user verbatim. They should have encoded it as HTML entities. So for like less than and greater than signs in HTML tags, that would become like ampersand LT semicolon or ampersand GT semicolon, and that would not be interpreted by your browser as HTML. It'd be like text. So that would be able to that would mitigate the cross-site scripting issue. For the command injection issue, well, I guess the crux of that vulnerability there is they're taking user-supplied input in the password field and they're calling that out to the shell, and we could just include backticks to execute or include the output of any command inside of that. So what they should have done really is escape that. If you have to shell out, and I would recommend keeping that to a minimum when you're writing software. If you have to shell out with user-supplied input, you need to escape that properly. In this case, well, I don't know about this case, but PHP, for example, has like escape shell args. That's like a built-in function. If you use that properly, then it's pretty much impossible to, well, I'm not going to say impossible because there are ways to get around that. It's less likely that you're going to have an exploitable command injection. But like I said, shelling out generally is not, it's like
shelling out,
calling the shell with,
are you a shell out?
Calling it a shell process with input supplied by a potential attacker is not often sound engineering practice. So I would say avoid it whenever possible.
Void it, okay. Let's see. Anna is also clarifying what applications are we assessing, and what languages do we often assess?
All of them, pretty much.
All of them.
Yeah.
Like their example was like, is PHP still a viable language to help you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, PHP is like the traditional web app, like dynamic web app thing.
Yeah.
That's like where all the old school web vulnerabilities came from. So yeah, sure, PHP is great for learning.
Okay. And then let's see, Jared is saying, oh, when we were testing for the cross-site scripting, were there did we find it by multiple requests to the NAS, or did we examine the server software? Like did we just start like spamming forms to be like, oh, like can we just put like alert in here, or was it we actually saw in the software that they weren't even escaping anything? Or
it was client side. So the tool I was using, Burp Suite, the HTTP proxy, when you're browsing around the target web application, it like builds up a list of all the endpoints, and you can sort and search them by which endpoints have parameters, and then you can just you can look at which requests that have parameters actually reflect back data verbatim, and once you find one of those, you can narrow it down and see if it has cross-site scripting. So it's like to answer your question, I don't think for this one we looked at the backend source code, like the server source code. That's definitely a viable option. Like look for request handlers where they're not escaping output. That's certainly viable. But in this case, we didn't do that. We just probably sorted which ones have parameters and went from there.
So that's the thing, is like almost every single one of our live streams, we're showing burps. We're showing the analyst use it and how they discovered the issues. Maybe it would be useful to sort of like put together like what was our tool belt of tools versus our own like methodology. It's like, here's our methodology of like step one, we're going to start looking at this, and this is the tool we use.
Yeah, I think we may have written some blog posts about that, like methodology and tooling. But yeah, Burp Tree is definitely in our toolbox for every one of these assessments.
Cool. Well, I don't know if I'm going to see any more questions pop in, but is there anything else you want to get off your chest today?
Off my chest? No, not here.
Yeah.
Not here.
Not here. Okay. So maybe offline we'll
Yeah.
hear you complain. All right. I guess with that we can sort of close it for today, unless I see one more question pop up that I can keep us
Next
here.
5 seconds.
Next 5 seconds. But I think that was a pretty successful sort of little question scenario. That was awesome.
I liked it.
Awesome. You want to close us out? Remind the viewers about our blogs, check everything out.
So if you go to blog.securityevaluators.com, click on ISE Labs, and you can see everything that the research team has written about with regard to routers, NAS devices, other various IoT things. So yeah, just check us out on there, and we'll probably see you again soon for another live stream in the next coming months. Thank you.
Well, no, you gotta tell them about, make sure to follow us on the Twitter and share our stuff.
Oh,
tell
yeah.
Our friends so that we have more people in the live streams to ask more questions.
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe to our Twitter.
Smash the like button.